Now, as we discussed last week, the latest census has shown for the first time that less than half of Australians identify as Christian. About 44% of Aussies now say they're Christian, while those who tick no religion are not far behind at 39%. This has caused quite a stir, with some claiming Australia is abandoning God, even though, counting all faiths, of course, more than half of us are believers. But my next guest is a fervent believer that Christianity is far from dead and that still plays a fundamental role in Australian society. Joining me now is the former Deputy Prime Minister and Nationals leader, John Anderson. John, good to talk to you again. Were you dismayed to see those census numbers?
Disappointed. The faster decline than I expected. But in many ways, it just continues a long-term trend line right across the West, even in America, that most Christian are Western countries, and probably reflects the nominalisation, if you like, effect. People who are nominal only dropping out and saying, well, I don't want to declare I have any real beliefs anymore, perhaps being honest in that. And in that sense, I've seen a few people say, perhaps usefully, that it means that, well, if you're going to be a real Christian, you're now identified, you've actually got to be prepared to go out and say, I actually believe this. It's no longer a home for nominalism.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt what you say in Australia and in other Western countries, this is a trend away from organised religion. But what I think there hasn't been enough focus on with this particular census is how there was an active campaign by the no religion campaigners, and this was led by the Atheist Society and the Rationalist Society and the like. And they were very active on social media, asking people to tick no religion. Here's an example of what they were posting on social media. In this case, it's the entertainer Tim Minchin.
So if you're not particularly religious yourself, tick no religion on the census and encourage your friends to do the same so that we don't end up in a situation where our currently very religious government gets to use the census to justify the religious privilege in their policy and funding decisions.
Tim Minchin there, John. Now, obviously, they're entitled to run that campaign, and people in the end make a choice that on their own volition. And as you say, if there's more focus on ticking no religion, then those who tick a religion are probably doing it with more certitude, with more commitment. But are you concerned about a campaign like that? And then on the back of the census numbers, they get out there and argue that the government's got to get rid of tax breaks for religious organisations and the like?
Well, yes, I am, because it's so intellectually dishonest. It's so disingenuous. It's so ignorant of history. Look, let's stand right back and take a bird's eye view of what's really happened in the West over the last, say, 150 years or so. That bastard offshoot of the Enlightenment, Marxism, has been very prevalent in all of our thought-leading centres now for a very long time, especially since the whole Frankfurt School of Thought in the 1920s in Germany. It has been dedicated to overthrowing not just Christianity, but every other institution of Western freedoms. Let me put it another way. The bastard offshoot of the Enlightenment called Marxism has been committed, if you like, to the relentless attack on not just Christianity, because it seems to be the religion they single out. It's the one that they think has stopped the proletariat from rising up and creating the revolution they've looked for, but also the very Enlightenment that spawned the bastard offshoot, Marxism. So you've had this relentless attack from people who can now see the fruits of their effort. This is the thing I would say to Australians who are dancing on the grave of Christianity. Okay, it's a free country. You don't have to believe. But ask yourself how well you think things are going. We have never been as divided. We have never been as lacking in trust in our institutions, and even perhaps certainly in the people who man them, but in our institutions. And they are essentially, of course, products of Christianity and the Enlightenment. We've never recorded such levels of depression, anxiety, of self-harm, identity politics. The senior political writer in this country asked a few years ago, Paul Kelly, are we in fact becoming ungovernable as a people? So how's it going? This throwing away of the narrative in favour, instead of, if you like, the approach that says you find yourself in belief in a higher being and a higher set of moral values and what have you, and instead you find yourself in yourself. In other words, you become your own God. So what's the outcome meant to be in the end? 25 million little 10 gods all competing with one another for power? I prefer what the great Catholic thinker G.K. Chesterton said. He said, the good book's given us a way to live and order ourselves that nobody's managed to better. It tells us to love our neighbour and our enemy, even though they're often, in our minds, exactly the same people. But we don't do that now. We've set up a system of competing rights everywhere. So we compete with one another because my rights are paramount. It's not working, troops. Why get so excited about trying to push a barrow even further? It's time we stop digging before we're so far behind we can't get out of the hole.